This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Senior Chinese diplomats hold two-day dialogue with U.S. officials in Alaska. Diplomats and defense chiefs from the U.S. and South Korea meet in Seoul. And the WHO says benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine outweigh risks. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here for the latest in business is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Close to 50,000 businesses in South Africa's tourism sector are on the verge of collapse. And Egyptian authorities plan to increase spending in the next fiscal year to boost household incomes amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll have the details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thank you, Rama. We begin in Alaska, where senior diplomats from China and the United States will be holding their first face-to-face talks since President Joe Biden took office. Beijing's delegation includes Yang Jiechi, Politburo member of the Communist Party of China. Joining him is Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Representatives for the U.S. include Secretary of State Antony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. This is considered a high-stakes meeting between the two countries. The two-day dialogue is likely to revolve around the pandemic, climate, and trade. It's also expected to tackle issues concerning Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and Taiwan. Nathan King has more from Anchorage in Alaska.
In terms of expectations, there'll be two sessions of talks on Thursday. Starting early in the afternoon, there'll be a dinner break. Whether they have dinner together will be a sign, perhaps, of progress as well. And then there'll be an evening session and then a morning session on Friday as well. We are expecting a full and frank discussion, as they say in diplomatic circles. As you know, the US has upped rhetoric and reality over the last few days, leading up to this first meeting of the Biden administration with top Chinese officials, including widening potential sanctions against Chinese and Hong Kong officials related to the Hong Kong Autonomy Act, which was passed on the Trump administration in Congress. They say they're going to talk about human rights, and of course China has hit back. There was a very powerful interview which we've been playing that you've seen from China's ambassador to the US, Shui Qiankai, and he basically says that if the US criticizes things that belong to China, China's territorial integrity, then the talks will reach a dead end, and that China will not back down. It will not bend just for some sort of atmosphere coming out of the talks. Now, hopefully, a lot of this is just rhetoric, especially from Washington, going into these talks.
Beijing says no compromise on sovereignty or core interests. Meanwhile, the Chinese Foreign Ministry says a positive outcome depends on the efforts of both sides.
Attempting to engage in microphone diplomacy and ganging up to put pressure on China are a waste of effort. China hopes that through this dialogue, it can fully communicate with the U.S. to promote healthy and stable development of bilateral relations. But we don't expect a single conversation to solve all our problems. The U.S. should recognize China's determination to firmly defend its sovereignty, security, and interests.
Well, China and the U.S. have disagreements on multiple issues, but they're both willing to collaborate on issues of common interest, such as fighting the pandemic and climate change. We discussed that with Dr. Teng Jiangqing, Director of American Studies Department at the China Institute of International Studies.
We support the two countries to cooperate in the future. For example, climate change, non-proliferation, and the fighting against the pandemic. This is the one side of the coin of Biden's foreign policy toward China, because on one side, the U.S. administration, Biden's administration would like to continue the so-called strategic competition with China. This is a long way to go for the United States. And on the other side, the U.S. side would like to find some, areas to cooperate with China, as Secretary of State Blinken mentioned earlier this month. There are three layers. On one on top layer is the competition. On the other layer is the collaborative, and on the third layer is adversarial, because the relationship between the two countries have been changed greatly in recent years. Actually, this is a result of the balance of power. The traditional balance of power between the two countries has been changed, and actually we are establishing new balance of power. So the two sides should, sit down to have a dialogue to deal with the ups and downs during the process of rebalancing. So this is actually a very important task for China and for the United States to maintain a stable relationship between the two sides.
Top diplomats and defense chiefs of the U.S. and South Korea met in Seoul during the 2+2 meeting. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Washington was weighing up pressure and diplomatic options when it comes to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea's nuclear program, and would outline a new policy towards Pyongyang in the coming weeks. Blinken and U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin are in Asia as part of the Biden administration's attempts to shore up alliances in the region and curtail China's influence. Jack Barton has more from Seoul.
The DPRK's nuclear warhead and ballistic missile programs, unsurprisingly, led the agenda in Seoul for the US and South Korea's top foreign policy and defense officials.
We are committed to the denuclearization of North Korea, reducing the broader threat the DPRK poses to the United States and our allies.
US officials say a review of DPRK policy is currently underway and that a new and different approach will be announced within weeks. The meeting coincided with a statement from a senior DPRK Foreign Ministry official that Washington's recent attempts at contact were a cheap trick. It also followed a warning earlier this week by Kim Jong-un's sister that the US would not be able to rest at night if it continued, in her words, to make a stink.
We see it shows that North Korea is closely keeping an eye on South Korea-U.S. high-level talks, while the United States is reviewing policy against the North.
Blinken and Austin are in South Korea in a bid to fortify Washington's alliances in Asia, marking the first overseas trip by top-level members of President Joe Biden's administration. Blinken heavily criticized China going into the 2+2 meeting, but there was no mention of China in the final statement by South Korea, which is keen to maintain good relations with Washington and Beijing. Seoul made its position clear from the start on the quad grouping of the US, Japan, India and Australia.
South Korean government officially have said that if the quad is excluding a specific country, which is China, then South Korea is not interested in joining them.
The high-level talks were followed by an informal chat with President Moon Jae-in. Blinken's next meeting is with senior Chinese officials in Alaska. Jack Barton, CGTN, Seoul.
A Chinese construction machinery manufacturing company, XCMG, is making inroads into Africa by contributing to the development of infrastructure while also training locals. In recent years, the company has sold heavy machinery and continues to provide service and spare parts for the machines used in infrastructure development projects on the continent. Wilka Sanyawa tells us more.
Bit by painstaking bit, Nairobi's Expressway is taking shape. Construction workers working round the clock are making sure of this, and mingled with the sights and sounds of the busy Mombasa Road, are the sounds from the heavy machinery moving the project forward. Many of these machines come from the XCMG company, a heavy machinery manufacturing company that was founded in 1943 in China. In 2017, XCMG initiated an upgraded plan for the overseas service and spare parts network, establishing independent service and spare parts centers to increase support for dealers. A year later, it opened its first direct regional spare parts center in Nairobi to serve businesses in East Africa.
We think, Kenya is a very potential good market. It's developing very fast. We are very proud to be one of the, partner in the process of the Kenya's development.
The company has also set up bases in Guinea, Nigeria, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is from such investments that the company's involvement in projects such as Nairobi's groundbreaking Expressway has arisen.
We can see a very great potential for China and Africa countries. It's very the mutual complementary, growth together. We have the experience of construction technology and high-end construction equipment. And also, you need a lot of infrastructure, and we can mutually, benefit. We are very proud of the Africa and the China friendship and cooperation.
This is one example of the ways in which China-Africa cooperation is yielding benefits for both sides. In this case, it has also led to a transfer of skills and knowledge.
There are a lot of people who are learning a lot, especially the manual works. There are some who came here without some experience, and they're being taught. There are some machines which are also, I think they are new in Kenya as well, and the training they give them here, I think in future they'll be the ones who will be running all those stuff. For me personally, I think I'm sharpening more of my language.
There are more than 200,000 pieces of XCMG equipment in use outside China at present. Kenya alone has over 2,000 XCMG machines, each of these playing a part in building Africa's infrastructure. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN, Nairobi.
Let's go to Zimbabwe now, where the government there is expecting a bumper maize harvest, which could be 3 times higher than the amount produced during the drought-hit 2019-2020 season. CGTN's Farai Mokatua reports on what this means for the country, which has been battling food insecurity.
Davidson Gambinga began planting his maize crop in November 2020, hoping that forecasts of an above-average rainy season would materialize. They did. And today, he's expecting to reap over 30 tons, his biggest harvest in years.
Mwezi inonetsa mvura January to February, but ndo mwezi yakanayisa mvura manje. Amuna ndo yakabva yatoita season yacho, especially ku GMP. Ichatadza kutotora chibage chacho because chakawandisa.
Total national output is estimated to reach at least 2.5 million metric tons. Government plans to raise 65 billion Zimbabwe dollars, that's about 783 million US, to buy up 1.8 million tons of maize. That'll be enough to meet annual consumption, and what's left over could be stored in the National Grain Reserve.
This season is very important because it then guarantees that we're going to have food for this coming 12 months, but we are also going to have food in the event of a drought. So the economy, what it means to the economy is that normally when we have a deficit, we will have to import. And importing means foreign currency, use of foreign currency reserves. And that's a drain on the fiscus. But this is an import substitution.
The good harvest will also lower the number of people requiring food and humanitarian aid, currently estimated to be over 5 million by the United Nations World Food Programme.
Given that we have this situation where we're looking at the good harvest and our future food assistance during the lean season will be in all likelihood much lower, it will open up the opportunity for WFP and many other agencies to continue refocusing their investments towards resilience building, towards livelihoods, to really help bolster that capacity of those communities and households to better live with shocks going forward.
Zimbabwe has predicted strong economic growth of 7.4% in 2021, mainly on the back of the rebound of the mainstay agriculture sector. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Mazoe, Zimbabwe.
Time for us to take a short break and return. More news, including the WHO says AstraZeneca vaccine's benefits outweigh risks. And the first consignment of the AstraZeneca vaccine arrives in Somalia.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, the World Health Organization says the benefits of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine far outweigh its risks. It is therefore recommended that inoculations using that vaccine continue. The WHO listed the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine for emergency use last month. It is believed this will increase access to what is said to be a relatively inexpensive shot to the developing world. Here's CGTN's Wanja Mugai with more.
More than a dozen European countries have suspended the use of AstraZeneca vaccine due to safety concerns. The European Medicines Agency says it is investigating reports of 30 cases of unusual blood disorders out of the 5 million recipients of the AstraZeneca vaccine. The World Health Organization has, however, assured people that the vaccine's benefits outweigh its risks.
And some countries have and a precautionary approach, have paused the use of AstraZeneca. But the group of SAGE, the group of WHO, and the group of the many different groups have been looking at the studies, and this is a normal practice. Whenever there is a signal of something or a potential signal, it doesn't mean that there's an association, but they have to look and they have to do a proper study to evaluate whether or not it's associated with the use of the vaccine. The use of the vaccine far outweighs the risks. We know that vaccines that are out there are safe and effective, and it is really important that individuals get vaccinated when it's your turn, when you are offered.
Vaccines have saved millions of lives, but vaccines are biologic products, and we have to use them carefully and safely, and as Maria said, these products have been proven to be safe. But when you start to use vaccines at large scale, problems that were potentially very rare can crop up, and that's why we have this post-distribution enhanced surveillance. And in fact, we've been watching very carefully for anything that may go wrong. So let's wait and let's see. We would advise people to keep taking the vaccines. Right now, this virus has a much bigger chance of doing you a lot of harm than the very, very potentially tiny risks associated with this vaccine.
The global health body has recommended that countries around the world continue inoculations using the AstraZeneca vaccine.
And I think we need to be very careful that we don't end up overreacting and damaging the product in people's minds until we're absolutely sure that there actually is a problem. And right now, that is not certain. And let's wait for the data to be looked at before we make any conclusions.
The European Union regulator is set to release its findings on the AstraZeneca vaccine on March 18th. Its head, Emma Cook, says she sees no reason to change its recommendation on AstraZeneca, one of 4 vaccines that it has approved for use in the European region. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
The AU says African countries that have acquired the AstraZeneca vaccine should continue to use them to curb COVID-19. Echoing the views of the WHO, Dr. John Nkegasong, who is the director of the Africa CDC, told a news conference that the vaccine's benefits outweigh the risks. The AU's recommendation comes while more than a dozen European countries have suspended the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. This amid concerns over the risk of blood clots. The Africa CDC is urging African countries using AstraZeneca doses to monitor and report any adverse reactions. Many African countries have continued administering the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine despite several European countries suspending its rollout. As mentioned earlier, there have been concerns raised that the vaccine may have caused blood clots in some people who'd received it. While European countries are opting for other vaccine types, Africa is still relying heavily on the Oxford AstraZeneca inoculation. CGTN's Enoch Sikolia reports.
African countries started to receive vaccines under the UN-backed COVAX program in February, and many have signed up to join the program. The WHO-supported initiative seeks to distribute an initial 500,000 doses of the vaccines worldwide. By the end of 2021, Africa plans to have vaccinated 20% of its population through the COVAX program. Even though the initiative has delivered AstraZeneca and Pfizer vaccines to Africa, the continent seems to favor vaccines developed by AstraZeneca and Oxford University. Professor Walter Jaoko, the director of Kenya Vaccine Initiative, says there are several factors informing that, but key among them are the freezing requirements of various types of vaccines.
When you're thinking about storage, you're thinking about not just storing it, but also transporting it. Because when you're transporting a vaccine, it has to be maintained at the same temperature that you store it.
The first vaccines to be rolled out in the world, Pfizer and Moderna, require ultra-cold temperatures for their storage. For example, the Pfizer vaccines require -80°C storage, and so transporting such a vaccine in the tropical countries of Africa with poor infrastructure will be counterproductive. Then there is the aspect of cost.
Moderna and Pfizer have made it clear they're a business company, and so they're producing them as business, so they're going to make a profit. AstraZeneca, in partnership with Oxford University, have made it clear that they're doing it for humanity.
Most of the AstraZeneca vaccines delivered to African countries have been free, according to Professor Jaoko. The Democratic Republic of Congo, however, has suspended the rollout of AstraZeneca vaccine following concerns raised in some countries over its safety. The DRC has received 1.7 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine through the COVAX scheme. Despite concerns, the World Health Organization has recommended continuous use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. According to WHO, the benefits of using the vaccine outweighs its risks. The WHO and the European Medicines Agency argue that there is no link established between the vaccine and the reports of clotting.
What is being said about the side effects, it is overblown. What would happen is whenever there is something that happens to somebody who has been vaccinated, the key thing is to investigate what is the reason. And what usually, pausing is not a problem. Pausing to find out whether there is an issue.
South Africa, the worst affected country on the continent, delayed an initial vaccination plan using the AstraZeneca vaccine due to concerns about its efficacy against a new variant of the coronavirus. It started vaccinating people on the 17th of February after receiving 80,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is administered as a single dose and has been shown to be effective against the variant. Enoch Sikolia, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Let's cross over to Somalia now, where the first batch of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine has arrived in Mogadishu. The doses were received by high-profile officials from the Somali Federal Ministry of Health, along with the UN. This batch of vaccines targets frontline workers, the elderly, and people with chronic health conditions. The doses arrived precisely a year after Somalia detected its first COVID-19 case. Meanwhile, the UN has hailed Somali authorities for their sustained efforts to combat COVID-19. It says it will continue to support the rollout of a nationwide vaccination campaign. Somalia's health ministry plans to conduct mass vaccination drives to educate the public about the inoculation's value and efficacy. Regarding vaccine distribution, the country will use existing cold chain supply systems.
After tireless efforts, we have managed to receive the first batch of the vaccine and we're expecting to receive more. I want to commend the efforts of the health workers across Somalia for their efforts in saving lives. May Allah grant paradise to those who have died.
Uganda could be a step away from developing a homegrown rapid testing kit for COVID-19. Developed by scientists from Makerere University, the kit is undergoing accuracy checks before authorities can give it final approval. Isabel Nakira reports.
The diagnostic kit is designed to produce results by running tests using blood samples. The team behind it says the kit will detect exposure to the coronavirus and is 60% accurate.
You get a small finger prick, you put on the test pad, you add in a buffer, and the test is run. And ideally, it should give you results within 2 to 3 minutes. But for the test to be read, you have to wait for another about 10 minutes.
The test kit is designed to enable health workers to carry out tests from any location. The tests will cost less than $5, much more affordable than the usual tests done in labs. Those cost $60 and results are out after about 6 hours. Researchers recommend that a confirmatory test is done in the lab after a rapid test confirms someone is positive. The team of scientists here say the innovation will support countries in carrying out quick and timely large-scale testing. It will also help understand how widespread the virus is in a community. The shortage of testing kits globally has seen many countries struggle to detect and respond immediately. The WHO has asked countries to increase testing so as to contain the spread of COVID-19. Uganda's health ministry has welcomed the project.
It becomes important that we have affordable, easy-to-use, rapid tests deployed for screening or surveillance within particularly high-risk transmission settings, such as some of the districts we have, the schools, which we are now beginning to open, as well as the prisons.
The kit is still undergoing improvements before it can be used commercially.
We've done internal validation. The test will go out and they do further expanded validation within a controlled environment. Later on, it will go into almost a countrywide, The more numbers we increase, the more we understand how the test performs.
Some of the reagents used in making the kit are being imported from the U.S. manufacturer Astra Diagnostics. The project is being funded by the government, the French embassy and local companies. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
The AU says China's continued support in the fight against COVID-19 on the continent and its financing of the construction of the Africa CDC headquarters are signs of the true friendship between Africa and Beijing. Speaking to CGTN, the AU Commissioner for Social Affairs, along with the Director of the Africa CDC, said that the China-backed headquarters would empower the continent. Here's CGTN's Giram Chala with the details.
In December 2020, the historic groundbreaking event marked the beginning of the construction of the China-aided future headquarters of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The Addis Ababa-based state-of-the-art building complex is already taking shape here, with construction being expedited. This project is fully funded by the Chinese government, and the African Union officials say this and other COVID-19 related support from Beijing are seen as part of the ever-growing Sino-Africa cooperation in the public health sector.
The support was started even before COVID-19. Since 2016, China is supporting technically and financially the establishment of Africa CDC. China also is supporting in building the headquarters of Africa CDC.
Amira El Fadil also said the China CDC has been highly supportive of its African counterpart.
China CDC is supporting Africa CDC by seconding experts that are working with our Africa CDC staff. They are supporting also the training and the capacity building of our staff. They are supporting us financially.
Africa CDC extensively.
Dr. John Nkengasong, the director of Africa CDC, says the prospect of having the new headquarters is exciting.
We continue to be very excited with the prospects of that, having our own headquarters, our own campus, and we look forward to the day that we invite you and have this press conference live from the new headquarters of the Africa CDC in Addis Ababa.
The landmark Africa CDC headquarters project covers an area of 90,000 square meters and has a total construction area of nearly 40,000 square meters. It's massive and it's expected to be completed within 25 months. It will be equipped with modern office buildings, high-end laboratories and accessories. The future headquarters of the Africa CDC will be another landmark in Ethiopia's capital. In addition to the African Union headquarters, China's extensive support for Africa and more particularly the continent's CDC has been appreciated by officials.
China has been supporting us, Africa CDC, extensively in the areas of diagnostics, in the areas of personal protective equipment.
In the future, the Africa CDC headquarters is expected to serve as a continental center for research and excellence. Grumtara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
That's all the news I have for you for now. I'll be standing by for more, including the latest from sport. For now, though, let's hand over to Rama for the latest in business.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. Close to 50,000 businesses in South Africa's tourism sector are on the verge of collapse. And Egypt's government plans to increase spending to boost incomes amidst the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Let's head over to South Africa, where roughly 50,000 tourism businesses have either temporarily or permanently closed down due to the pandemic. That's according to tourism officials, who point to a massive decline in tourism numbers as the reason. In Cape Town's tourism hotspot, that decline has driven many out of business. Some, however, are managing to stay afloat. Here's CGTN's Travis Andrews with this report.
Over the last 12 months, the tourism industry in Cape Town's Hout Bay has ground to a halt due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many businesses have either closed or pivoted, including local pizzeria Massimo's, who caters to both locals and tourists. With a massive drop in revenue due to various levels of lockdown, the restaurant had to find creative ways to stay open.
We thought out of the box. We decided to do different things when we were closed, when we were only allowed to reopen partially. So we decided to do the frozen pizzas, the frozen meals, the spiriti, which is our liquors. So all together it has helped us to survive and to keep all the stuff.
The business now operates at 80% of pre-COVID-19 levels and is increasing the range of its products to keep staff employed. Its new line of spirits and food stands as testament to the new opportunities that the pandemic has also unlocked.
Eventually we may go back to the original situation, but it will be a very long time. And I think now people, they also get the idea that they can eat well staying home, especially with the good quality that we offer. So it's a good alternative. And also before we were limited to people that could drive to us in Obey. Obey is a bit isolated, a village.
While tourism businesses in Hout Bay rely heavily on an influx of tourists, an 81.2% drop in visitors over the festive season has left many out of pocket. Over the last 12 months, many businesses in Hout Bay have struggled due to a lack of tourists. And the earliest relief could come in the fourth quarter of this year, where the country embarks on a far broader vaccine rollout program.
It is important that our government vaccinate as many people as possible, specifically those with comorbidities, and roll that program out as quickly as possible so that international tourists would feel safe and know that we have herd immunity.
For now, air connectivity also remains restricted, so little to no tourists are arriving. But the local market is supporting the businesses in what remains a tough economic environment. That's Andrew, CGTN, Cape Town.
From one end of the continent to the other, Egypt is planning to increase its expenditure in the 2021-2022 fiscal year, which starts in July. The idea here is to boost the incomes of millions of Egyptian households and to try and cushion them from the slowdown triggered by the pandemic. The new spending plans will also increase the minimum wage levels for public sector employees, the pensions and civil servant salaries, with a monthly minimum wage for civil servants set to go up by 20%. From Cairo, here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
The newly announced budget reflects the state's policies to deal with the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Economic growth rate is forecast to remain below the pre-COVID target of 5.5%, although total spending is set to rise by 9% year-on-year. Most of it is aimed at boosting social services.
We see a big increase in expenditure in education, the school and university levels, as well as the same increase in spending on the health sector. This goes with President Sisi's pledge in his second term in office to overhaul and upgrade the health and education services in the country with the aim to improve the quality of life for Egyptians.
Expenses will also be geared towards raising salaries and pensions, increasing social welfare programs for the poor, and emergency aid packages for struggling businesses and institutions. The government is not eyeing any tax hikes in the 2021-2022 fiscal year, but it expects revenues to jump by 13%. This is in spite of the significant drop in important sources of income, such as tourism and exports, which have been battered by the pandemic.
Though he announced no tax increase, the government is seeking to improve tax collection management with better trained tax collectors, incentives for taxpayers, and introducing technology to reduce tax evasion. Another important revenue stream will come from investments in several sectors such as real estate, which is picking up quickly and attracting a lot of investors. We have huge mega projects, building new cities, roads, transport, industrial zones, attracting investments in multiple industries, including renewable energy projects and digital transformation.
Numbers show optimism of a recovery from the pandemic next year, with the budget surplus forecast to more than double, pushing deficit down by 1.2% of GDP. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
On to Nigeria now. The new policy over there introduced by the central bank that's aimed at boosting the nation's foreign currency reserves seems to be gaining some traction. It's a Naira for dollar plan, as it's more commonly known. It gives an incentive of offering 5 Naira for every US dollar remitted through formal channels. As CGTN's Kelechi Mekalamna reports, the country's central bank is hoping this will attract a lot more remittances from its diaspora to boost foreign currency reserves.
Businessman Babatunde Adetiba has been receiving monies from overseas for more than 8 years now. In the past, he used unofficial channels for his foreign transactions in order to boost his exchange rates. Diaspora remittances were paid in the local currency, the naira, and at a discounted rate.
Right now, we receive money through Central Bank of Nigeria licensed international money transfer organizations called IMTOs. Well, that's how we receive our monies now. But before now, we have other channels that enable us to get effective rates.
But the new central bank scheme does not only ensure remittances are received in the originating currency, it also offers a 5 naira incentive for every US dollar received through formal channels. Now Babatunde is cashing in on the opportunity.
It's one of the best incentives that the central bank has given in a long time, and it's been effective. What that means is that apart from getting the effective exchange rate for the money sent, you get an extra 5 naira.
About 13 million Nigerians live abroad. That's apart from those living in other African countries. That's why Nigeria benefits massively from diaspora remittances, surpassing oil revenue. International professional firm PricewaterhouseCoopers projects that Nigeria's migrant revenues could grow to $29.8 billion in 2021. The firm estimates that diaspora flows into Nigeria totaled $23.63 billion in 2018, representing 6.1% of its GDP. The central bank's Naira for dollar seeks to strengthen diaspora inflows and gradually eliminate informal channels of receiving funds. But economists say there are loopholes in the scheme. Currently, the exchange rate in the black market is 480 naira to $1, far much higher than the central bank's approved rate of 380 naira to $1. Experts say for the scheme to thrive, the government may need to either crash the black market or match its rate. Nigeria's external reserve fell from $36.19 billion at the beginning of February to $34.7 billion in the first week of March. The Naira for dollar scheme is meant to help boost the reserves, and the quick fix policy will last for the next 2 months. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
On to the United States now, where the Federal Reserve says the economy will bounce back stronger than forecast from the pandemic, with a forecast growth of 6.5% this year. The Fed also signaled it's not expecting to raise rates, at least in the next 2 years. Giles Gibson has this report from Washington.
The US is giving out millions of coronavirus vaccines every single day, and the Federal Reserve says the economy is getting a shot in the arm too. It's forecasting 6.5% growth this year, raising its last prediction of 4.2% in December.
The path of the economy continues to depend significantly on the course of the virus and the measures undertaken to control its spread. Since January, the number of new cases, hospitalizations, and deaths has fallen, and ongoing vaccinations offer hope for a return to more normal conditions later this year.
The Fed is also holding interest rates steady at near zero. It isn't expecting to raise rates for a couple of years and will continue its asset purchase program.
US President Joe Biden is traveling the country this week to promote the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. Not a single Republican senator voted for the package, and GOP lawmakers are warning that it could unleash inflation.
The White House, though, says now is the time to go big. As well as $1,400 direct payments, the bill contains money for vaccine distribution, reopening schools, and supporting small businesses. As for inflation, the Fed expects it to rise to 2.4% this year before falling again in 2022.
Our ability to achieve maximum employment in the years ahead depends importantly on having longer-term inflation expectations well anchored at 2%.
With almost 10 million more Americans out of work compared to this time last year, though, the coronavirus comeback is only just beginning. Giles Gibson for CGTN in Washington.
One final story for you in the segment, this one from Europe. Brussels has threatened to block the shipment of COVID-19 vaccines to countries that either produce their own vaccines or that have high vaccination rates. Now, that warning shot is coming as the Commission unveiled its controversial plan to introduce COVID passports in order to help ease travel by air across the bloc. Those in the tourism industry are hopeful it could help turn things around. But New Waterman now reports they argue this will only work if government keep it simple.
Nestled along Brussels Embassy Row is Le Grand Zabre, a B&B Jean-Louis Festerats and his wife opened in 2019. They sunk $35,000 into converting office space into luxury accommodations, each of the 3 rooms named after one of their children.
We're the Victoria one, the most beautiful one.
But months after flinging open the doors, coronavirus ground travel to a halt. Ever since, business has been sporadic. Some weeks full, then barren stretches for weeks.
Before we had reservation 3-4 months before, and now it's only last minute. And before it was people from America, Canada, everywhere. Now it's only the country around Belgium.
A vaccine passport could be the jolt the EU tourism industry and its 30 million workers need, a way to safely reopen borders, end costly lockdowns, and restore some semblance of normality.
When we travel, we usually carry with us 2 key pieces of documentation, our passport and also our vaccination card. What Brussels is proposing is a digital vaccination certificate that we carry with us on our phones.
COVID certificates in the form of QR codes or paper would be given to people who can either prove they've been vaccinated, recovered from the virus, or have recently tested negative. It would be left up to member states to decide on what privileges it will unlock, like skipping quarantine or testing, which has raised concerns about discrimination.
If we go into using these certificates in other ways, we have to see if that use is necessary, proportionate, and non-discriminatory.
Brussels hopes to roll out the certificates by summer. By then, more Europeans should be vaccinated after a bungled start to immunizations. Brussels on Wednesday saying no options are off the table when it comes to protecting the bloc's supplies, warning the US and UK, which it accuses of hoarding jabs.
If the situation does not change, we will have to reflect on how to make exports to vaccine-producing countries dependent on their level of openness.
As for Jean-Louis Festerats, he sees the COVID certificates as a way out of night after night of vacancies, but only if politicians can keep it simple. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Brussels.
I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. In global business, we'll be diving into the world of commodities. An Italian court has acquitted Shell and the Italian oil giant Eni of any accusations of bribery in a $1 billion bribery scandal that involved control of an oil block in Nigeria. We'll have the details on why that happened at the top of the hour. See you then. For now, back to Hannah.
We're looking forward to that, Roman. We'll see you in a bit. Well, let's not take a short break and return your sport news. Frenchman Benjamin Herbert fires 7 under 64 to take early lead at European Tour Magical Kenya Open.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Time now for the sport news. The 2021 Magical Kenya Open Europe Tour teed off at Nairobi's Karen Country Club on Thursday, with Frenchman Benjamin Hebert firing 7 under par 64 to take early charge of the leaderboard. Hebert is a shot clear of 7 golfers, led by Poland's Adrian Meronk, who are on 6 under par 65. South Africa's Justin Harding carded an eagle and 5 birdies for 5 under par 66 to emerge the best placed African in the field. The event made its return to the European Tour schedule this week as the first of 2 tournaments in back-to-back weeks at Karen Country Club. Zimbabwe's Robson Chinoi, who ended the first round of the Kenya Open, is the highest-ranked East African golfer, having carded a total of a 4 under par 67, which is rearing to charge up the leaderboard in the remaining rounds.
No, it was very good.
I played a very good round, bogey-free round. I started very well, feeling confident, and I'm happy with my score to them. 2 under back 9, 2 under front 9, which is good. No, the course was very good. It's playing pretty much good there. The greens are good, fairways, very good. I can't complain. I just need to continue hitting the ball the way I was hitting it today, and just keep myself calm and concentrate like what I was doing today.
In Ethiopia, Nigerian footballer Samson Samson has set up an academy which he hopes will show off the country's skills. CGTN's Kuleto Wanjohi visited his academy in Addis Ababa and filed this report.
When Samson moved to Ethiopia in 2019, he was promised a job as a player in the Ethiopian league. It was a con, and the contract never materialized. But as he pondered his next move, he says he saw another opportunity: training children.
Mostly in Ethiopia, most of them doesn't believe that they can earn a living through this football or play in international football. But I just want to give them that exposure to give them the way and how they can improve themselves in football and in moral.
As he seeks support from the government and Football Federation here, he is using his own old contacts.
I had a lot of experience when it comes to football, because when I was 16, I represented Nigeria under 17 qualification, the 2011 and 12. So it's a kind of big achievement and experience for me. And then from there, I play in a Serie B club, Carpi Cassion, in under 19. And then from there, I had a lot of contact, connections, which I can boast on, I can call on right now. So this is the kind of thing that we are doing.
His friend Lucas Andrew, also a footballer who comes to volunteer, says many children already have the talent.
Our own is just to enforce and teach them what to do, what not to do, things to do before training, things not to do after training, if actually they want to become professional player. Maybe from now to 3 years, maybe we see some of them in Ethiopian Coffee, the Premier League side, or maybe the Super League side. You understand? From there, you have to start step by step. Then from there, you can go to Europe.
Children whose families can afford it pay $21 per month. However, Samson says he retains those who can't meet the fees but have great potential. For now, the academy has 65 trainees between the age of 10 and 18. The coach says if they get more resources, they'll be able to accommodate even more people. The children train 3 times a week on this pitch in the city.
It's intense. The coach gives us good training, and he wants us to improve every time we come here.
In my village, I don't know how to play anything, but when I come to here, I learn how to play, how to pass, how to shoot, many things.
And I got good experience for this academy. There are good players, and we have a good coach. We see our coach as a friend, father, and everything.
Samson says as he seeks more support locally and internationally, he hopes that in 5 years, some of these children will be well trained to kick off their football career. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Following the death of Tanzanian President John Magufuli, Football Kenya Federation announced the cancellation of Thursday's international friendly between Harambee Stars and neighbors Taifa Stars. In a statement, FKF President Nick Mwenda said the game had been called off, quote, in respect to our brothers, end quote. Mwenda, on behalf of Football Kenya Federation, added that the entire Kenyan football fraternity wished them peace and solace during these difficult times. Early this week, the two teams had faced off against each other in the first of 2 international friendlies. Harambee Stars had edged their neighbors 2-1. Kenya's Eric Kapayito and Ayub Lyanga traded first-half goals before substitute Abdallah Hassan settled the contest with a 58th-minute winner. Hiroshi Sasaki, the head